There would have been plenty of people who tried to, home make a board with wheels under it, and that could have been any time in the late 50s or early 60s.
This contraption is called a skateboard, and much to the horror of motorists and little old ladies, kids are now riding them on every block.
Paul and John Witzig, they came up with a full-blown skateboard manufacturing business, and they needed a name to put on the skateboard, and my name went on.
When midgets boards first came out, that was really the beginning of the first skateboard craze in Australia, which would have been early summer '64, and that really lasted for about 6 or 8 months through '64 and into the winter of '65.
Come, baby, let's go cruising. I'm gonna take you cruising with me.
There were kids on any hill, skateboarding, I mean, they were a menace to society, guys going out and going under, the boards would go under cars and stuff, so it was a popular pastime.
Myself and another chap called Simon Buttonshaw were the test pilots for the early models, so we did that for nearly a year or so, and then they eventually brought out the product.
Everybody who was into surfing was riding a skateboard. The same clothing they wore for their surfing, they wore for their skateboarding. It really was sidewalk surfing.
If there wasn't surf, or if I was with my mates, we were skating all up and down this beach, or we're skating in the car parks or finding any sort of embankment that we could ride to emulate that feeling of surfing.
The two were hand in hand. If the surf was crappy on the northern beaches in Sydney, they were skating around Manly and Bondi.
And I saw people, riding skateboards the way they'd ride a surfboard, doing the same kind of moves, the hang 5, the hang 10, the drop knee turn.
So when you were on that board, it was kind of like you were going through the motions of being on a wave. We'd try to come down and get barreled in the hedge and then come through and maybe do a re-entry up a driveway.
Basically, skateboarding came from the dudes that couldn't surf and they just skated on the street. And then these guys just went, nah, man, we're doing more than that. We don't even surf.
The flower power, alternative culture, counterculture, drug period was a period of rejection, rejection of pretty much everything that had gone before. Image of skateboarding in the early 60s was a little bit too straight, a little bit too square, a little bit too orthodox. So skateboarding didn't fit the thinking at all.
The surfing craze got a little bit carried away with the drug thing and the summer of love in the late 60s, and it wasn't as much fun anymore. It took itself a little bit too seriously.
It was an accessory, it was a sideline, and they let it go.
So you can let it out for others.
The revival began about 5 years ago when American engineering student Frank Nosworthy devised a fiberglass board carrying fast-moving polyurethane wheels. Now it's big sport and big business.
And that's really what kicked it off, because you suddenly had grip that you could really get into some hard turns and lay the board right over, and it would grip on 2 wheels and you could really start to carve.
And that brought a whole new set of people into skateboarding and a whole different set of moves again. You got Shane Horan and Robbie Bain and those guys that then got into the Coke skateboard team.
There was a number of us that got picked out for the Coca-Cola skateboard team. From there, we basically went on to do demonstrations and travel the countryside. Sponsors started to come in. Not only were we sponsored by Coke and had to wear the same little Coke uniform sort of thing, also sponsored by Golden Breed and Levi's, Crystal Cylinders came in. So it became quite a popular thing. I was a full grommet, so I was into like handstands and nose wheelies and jumping over people. I was actually quite good at jumping over numerous people and landing on another board.
I just remember them as being a lot of pretty boys getting all the limelight. You talk about Hitler's children, This is exactly what it was like. Unless you were blonde hair or blue-eyed, you certainly couldn't get anywhere near the team.
They, I suppose, are the equivalent of the touring pros these days. They were just huge, you know, all the local kids in the various suburbs would rock up to see them do the demos and what have you. They were the big names in skateboarding in Australia at the time.
From an Australian perspective, the most influential person who turned up was Russ Howell.
Russ was the biggest influence. He was the first one that came out. That was probably November, December, probably just before school broke up in 1975.
Russ Howell got most attention at the time because he was the figurehead. He was the older skater, and he was doing the tricks at the time that were popular, the 360s and the handstands, in particular the handstand side of things. Russ Howell was a bit of a gymnast, I think, himself.
Russ Howell to me was always blew me out. You know, like that. There was something I didn't like about his skating. It was like too gymnastics.
The stuff that he was doing was just mind-blowing. I mean, we'd never seen more than a couple of 360s. Russ was doing 6 and 7 360s at that stage, and eventually when we saw him later on, he was doing, I think 98 was the best he got to.
We'd never even seen like a nose wheelie at that time, let alone sort of like 360s and spacewalks and those kind of tricks. So it really changed our whole sort of thinking, our whole focus about, you know, what could actually be done on a skateboard.
And then of course Stacey came out, and he was quite a different, it was just a totally different thing. That was not freestyle anymore. It wasn't standing up, it wasn't doing tricks, it wasn't doing handstands. It was all surf moves and looking for, yeah, do you guys know where there's a sloping wall or whatever? And that was what he's looking for all the time, and this really low tricks, and that's where John Tez, Gary Bird and guys like that really got into it, because he taught them all those sort of moves.
He was at the forefront of the new burgeoning scene of skating in the States, which was more bank-oriented, you know, looking for pulls, you know, taking skateboarding from flat ground onto slope walls and then eventually to vertical.
I think what happened when Russ and Stacey came out, you went along and you picked a favourite. For me, it was Stacey. He was more interested clearly in riding banks and also swimming pools, and Russ was more into the freestyle.
You know, Stacey was that much more younger, and his was all about taking surfing to its nth degree and discovering what could be done with sort of surfaces that weren't flat.
The boat ramp was probably the most radical of those old 70s bank spots, I'd say, only because of the steepness of the walls and the treachery of the fact that if you wiped out or you lost your board, you ended up in Sydney Harbour. So.
Everything that we learnt came via this bank, and it wasn't just the bank setup. I mean, if you look at the way this is, it's kind of like almost like first half pipe, you know, so that you could get a sort of good rhythm going.
We all basically came from the freestyle days, but we found what was happening with Stacey Peralta and the Dogtown scene and Tony Alva and Jay Adams and that in America. We found that a lot more exciting, heaps more fun.
They were cool, you know, they didn't wear much safety gear, they ripped up pools, you know, you'd read the stories, how they jump fences, pump out pools while the owners weren't there and skate them, and we'd copy all that. We'd go out to Doncaster and just mimic exactly what we'd seen. The 1970s in Melbourne were a very gang-orientated thing. They sort of had like gangs of what they used to call surfies. It sounds kind of funny now. They had the skinheads, the sharpies, which were different in some way, although they were kind of all bad to me. And what emerged out of that was a number of skateboard teams stroke gangs. And the two significant ones were the Sparks team and the Radlanders.
Where we grew up, skateboarding wasn't really sort of understood, so to sort of survive, we had to form a gang, and basically we sort of just started meeting each other down at Bloodbath. We sort of called ourselves Radtown actually, but because Radtown wouldn't fit into the cross, we just were thinking, what can we do? We sort of went to Radland, which was a pretty sort of hard move because there was a gang called Badland as well, and Badland was like more like Bob Biniak and all those guys, and we were more Dogtowners like Tony Elver and stuff like that. So it was a bit of a contradiction, but we didn't give a shit because it fitted in the cross, and that's what we wanted to be.
You know, I remember, you know, jumping on trains and going to skate spots and having heated arguments with the locals. You know, would say, you know, go away, you know, this is our territory, you know, nick off.
Like where I grew up, it was pretty scary. I mean, you sort of had to use these to survive, you know, and we had the same philosophy when we went skating. we just started getting hooked up on bands like, you know, Devo, Sex Pistols.
Bands like The Clash really sort of became prominent in what we were listening to at the park when those sessions got really sort of down and dirty because of all that aggression, you know?
Yeah, it was rock and music, you know, it was just, you know, hardcore, you know, and they were representing a minority again, you know, which was what we're all about.
It was a fascinating time to be involved in skateboarding because it was so tight-knit, it was so underground. I mean, a skater today just wouldn't be able to fathom how rare it was to see another skater, you know.
There was literally 80 of us spread amongst a population of however many million people, and of those 80, they pretty much grouped up into like 3 or 4, you know, groups of people. I mean, we used to get off a tram if we saw someone on a skateboard, just like, who's that, you know? It was just like no one, no people. It was a bit like the Amiga Man, you know, we didn't think there were any of us alive, you know?
When Devo brought out freedom of choice, you know, that was like an anthem for us, you know, because there was so much skateboarding in it. I guess it was reaffirming where you are. You know what I mean? Like, yep, there are people out there doing this, and yes, it's, you know, it's cool to be into. You know, like fucking, it's all right to be a skater because the rest of society at the time didn't even know skateboarding existed or cared. I hooked up with this guy, Steve Henshaw, and he'd heard about Pimble Pool. Well, like true grommets, we'd try to get out there before anyone would get there, any of the grown-ups would get there. We thought, you know, the rippers.
At first it was kind of like, it was myself, Adrian Jones, Biff Murdoch, Johnny McGrath, Wedge Francis.
The more isolated scenes basically came together in one focus at Pimble Pool.
There was security and there was police, and you know, often you'd get closed down, a session would get closed down, you'd be told to piss off and go home.
When Pimble Pool was right in the midst of its heyday, late 78 through the first half of 79, I reckon we wouldn't have been all that far behind the Americans, and particularly at the end of that real quiet, hardcore phase. Pimble Pool was the tail end of that and the beginning of the next 1980 sort of phase when skate parks started to appear.
At that stage, the Sydney scene must have been well beyond the Melbourne scene. I went down a few times and I certainly didn't see anything like what's happening here on the north side.
Their skate city, I think, was a lot more conducive for learning things, like because they sort of had 2 facing quarter pipes that were good for learning, a half pipe that was very tight, and a bowl that was fun to skate.
I mean, Sydney had Skate City, and that was just a whole fantastic scene. And I think Melbourne didn't really have that, although they got Skatopia at Melton.
Well, West Melton, we always felt kind of bitter about that, you know, because they built it out in Shitsville, you know, and sorry if you're in Melton. We just thought we'd found, you know, a little California when we went out there. It was incredible. I just remember that awesome buzz of turning up there in the car and looking at this skate park, and then the total disappointment when you realised it was a stinker, you know.
And then that was even another journey, man. That was like getting a country train to go skateboarding and going out there, and the dudes there were just the gnarliest bunch of bogans. And I remember one night they invited us to a party and I sort of went, no, we shouldn't go. And then I said we should go because if we don't go, they'll beat us up.
We always thought the Sydney guys had it easy, you know. It seemed like without trying, without being organised, that they always had better stuff. You know, the weather was always good, and you know, they just hang around, and girls would hang around. Like, you know, you never find a girl in the Collingwood skate park, you know, it's like feral city, you know. The skate city we had was like a 12-foot bloody monster with 2 foot of vert, no flat bottom, which is like, you know, doing anything on was difficult. The Melbourne scene, the Sydney guys are going to kill me for this, I think was more hardcore at the time, yet there was fantastic skaters in Sydney.
Like, the rivalry's more on the Melbourne guys' side, you know, it's more in their heads, you know what I mean, than in the Sydney guys' side, because Melbourne guys, I mean, they don't have much to live for, you know what I mean? The weather's shit, the chicks are all ugly, you know what I mean? So they've got nothing else to focus on but sport, you know?
think the first backyard ramps probably started 78 and then, you know, flowing right through to probably 88.
We spent so much time, money and energy creating the terrain to skate. It was hard and it did make a difference, and it really shook people out, because if you couldn't be bothered creating something to skate, well, you weren't skating.
Stephen and Peter were always about building world-class ramps. They built these things at a time when public facilities were 6-foot transitions, 8-foot transitions. They're building ramps with 10-foot curves and foot of vert and extensions and all this crazy stuff.
I remember this blue monstrosity, and it was 9 or 10 feet tall, 24 feet wide. It had a roll in it, had a rolled lip, it had coping. I mean, we'd never skated anything like this.
So if you were starting off from the beginning to learn skateboarding, is the book going to help you?
For sure. It also has a how to do section in it. It covers stuff like buying a board, building your own ramp, maintaining equipment. The purpose of publicising skating at the time to us seemed to be to get facilities built. That's really what it was about.
Within the book were ramp building plans, which meant that all of a sudden in every library there was plans to build ramps, and that had a big impact. It put the pressure back on the councils, the shires, to do something, and that's why there's so many of those ramps that look alike all around Australia. It's that basic 10-foot transition, 1 foot of vert, platform 8 foot wide, 16 foot of flat bottom. That spec was duplicated everywhere.
It changed a lot. I mean, the average person had never seen really vert skating, but by the end of that, they'd all seen it.
And then, of course, we knew what we had to do then. To raise the level again, we had to bring in better skaters than ourselves, which were the Americans.
First thing I saw was Lucy locked into a Smith grind, and I just turned up to the ramp and I'm just like, my God.
When Alan Losey came out here, it reminded me of what was happening when I was 15 with Russ Howell and Stacey Peralta, but on an even bigger scale again.
He was the first American pro to visit in a real sense since Stacey Peralta, and what he got to show was a lot more than Stacey did at the time, and it was 10 years later and the standard was just phenomenal. And he had mass media coverage, more probably even than Stacey probably got at the time, and he was on all the sports worlds, and that really blew it up, I think.
How long have you been doing this?
For about 10 years.
Wow, that's a long time, so you're going to be pretty good, and he is.
Skaters of my generation, all my mates at the time, we rocked up to see Alan Losey's demos, the skaters from the generation just behind that, and even the younger skaters too.
You know, he was one of the first person that I'd seen that was actually at the pro in Australia with unbelievable talent, you know, so he really opened up my mind again to what was possible.
Some people chose to stick their head in the ground like an ostrich and just ignore what they'd seen, and others tried to rise up and get that good.
I honestly think that Gregor and Lee were more mind-boggling to me than Alan Losey. Like when they showed up on the scene, I couldn't sleep that night when I went home. I was just like, who the hell was that?
I remember the day that I first saw Lee, I was skating up to Morty Alec ramp up the road, and I saw some guy skating the ramp trying to gay twist, and I thought he was joking, you know? And then the further I got, he did some stalled Smith vert. I just couldn't believe my eyes.
Lee was like, turned up to Morty Alec ramp and was just doing rocket airs and frigets and judos and stalled hand plants, and I just turned around to Johnny, and I love Johnny dearly, and I went, that's pro. Like that, and I said, that's pro, man.
There definitely wasn't much going on, because when we got here, in that late 85 or 6 or something like that, there was no one here who could skate properly in vert, you know.
Oh yeah, it just seemed like no one had skated for years, and that was really, the standard of skating was really bad.
So when we came here, we were sort of like, we were thinking like we wanted to be pro skaters, you know. People over here weren't really thinking like that, and if they were, had a long way to go.
They were just sort of in amazement sort of thing of what was going on in the States and stuff, and didn't think they could sort of do it themselves yet.
When they hit, it rushed everyone along a lot, you know. Everyone was like, fuck, you know, look at these guys, you know, that's how you skate. Lee had travelled and seen all this shit, and he brought it back to us, so sure, we're feeding off him, you know, why not? I mean, it's what we do, we're sucker fish.
Lee and Gregor definitely have moulded a lot of Australian skateboarding scene right now. Like you see the Tarson band, Jason. They pad on your grip tape. They always used to pad on me on my grip tape because I'd cut little designs in it and stuff.
like, you fairy, you know, as if you'd put, you know, effort into your grip tape, just ride it, you know what I mean? Like they were a bunch of Hell's Angels on skateboards or something.
Just the way someone does a lean to tail, if they don't do it right, then you can just bag them all night and stuff. The way they do their rail grinds and stuff, just, I don't know, you got to know what you're talking about, and when you do it, it's red fun, you know, you just talk all night.
The ramp ride, the first ramp ride, it was a ride, it wasn't a contest, you know. It was time to fucking go off, that was the deal.
People make you hang it on, people yell for you, scream for you, your friends.
What do they scream out? It's hard to hear.
Okay, in first place, the MeWe from New Zealand, Lee Ralph.
was the best contest I've had because, you know, I won a lot of money, which is always good. Did as well as I wanted to in the contest, which is the main part for any skating, you know. I lived up to my end of the bargain.
The first ramp ride probably triggered the biggest media story ever, which was the 60-minute story.
Skateboards. If you thought they were just a passing fad confined to a few idle street kids, think again. Back in the 70s, before skate ramps were invented, everyone rode the streets. Just a fad, they said, which wouldn't last. Well, it has. It's grown into a multi-million-dollar industry. But skating and skaters are still a long way from being respectable.
It said skateboarding's come, and it said skateboarding is something that people can make a living out of, and the general public for some reason think that's so important they take that as a sign that it's matured.
The next big thing that I saw was US professional skateboarders coming to Australia. That, to me, was the biggest eye-opener.
I remember watching Christian Hosoi, that was just like poetry in motion. You know? He could rip the street, he could rip a pool, he could rip a ramp.
It was incredible to see, and Christian was doing airs, you know, 4 feet higher than anyone had ever seen there before.
The first pro tour, realised that you could live off skating.
Australians really saw just how good skateboarding had really become. You had Gator, Jeff Phillips, Tony Hawk, Christian Hosoi.
Nardis came out, I think there was Gator, Chris Miller, so there was a lot of vert demos going on.
The first tour that came to Adelaide was the Power Tour that John Hurren brought over. It was Hawk, Stedham and Lance Mountain.
There were huge crowds. I mean, it was rivaling the US as far as the excitement and how many people showed up.
86, 87 was the first signs of it really reaching a level now where it will seriously be noticed.
The one at the Opera House will always be one of the most photogenic tours that I can ever remember. I mean, it's sensational.
It was raining and it was all going to be shit, you know, and there was so many skateboarders down there that day, and 100,000, whatever, all waiting for this one demo, and then the fucking clouds parted, the ramp dried, and out they came.
That was a big demo. There was 10,000 people there. They were bussing people in from Wollongong and you know, Newcastle. It was a hell of a demo.
It was like Kiss were playing or something for me, you know, it was just fucking bullshit. It was amazing.
And that was the time that I really just realised, you know, it's a tough thing to say about Australian skateboarding, but how far behind we were, you know, and how much ground we had to make up.
We used to come down and watch them, and just be, those guys would just be ripping, you know, and it'd be just like, you know, why do the Americans do it? You know, like, why can't, you know, any other nationality do it? And it was a big mystery, you know, but sooner or later we caught on, and, you know, there was lads that were ripping, and, you know, and now, you know, like, Australians are as good as anyone in the world, you know.
It's all about having a session, being able to put together a session with, you know, 5 or 6 guys who are of a good standard, and if 2 or 3 of them are really good, and the other guys are not so good, but they got the coordination and the style and the potential, sure enough they'll get there, you know. That started to get set up with the sessions we had at the Paran ramp at Northcote and Torquay. There'd be enough guys there who were shredding for Gazza and Jason and Luxford and that to catch on and just start pulling everyone in, you know, and just start giving it a shot themselves, you know.
Jason Ellis and myself had the drive to make each other perform, which is killer.
It was too hardcore. We were too harsh. It was like, yeah, you know, like, oh, you were skating rad today, Gary, and yeah, cool, whatever. You fucking tosser, you know what I mean? Like under the, like on the way out of there, like, who are you? Don't talk to me.
I think he'd agree with me that back in the competitive days when we were full on, it never happened that both of us had a good day the same day, because one of us was better one day or the other. So it meant one of us was having a terrible time and the other one was having a good time.
The Melbourne crew was always intense and going, oh, you know, you do a Smith grind and it's like, oh, that felt cool, and they go, that Smith grind sucks, dude, you know, and you'd be like, oh shit, okay.
That's what pushed us though, you know, we pushed each other.
The snake sessions were, you know, way too gnarly for me. You know, I used to get up really early in the morning, catch a train out to Mordialloc and skate that. You know, it was a better option than, you know, standing down the bottom of the ramp down there and just waiting for the lads to stop skating.
Hi, Jerry Son here, and welcome to Melbourne's Festival Hall, where tonight skaters from all over the world, including USA's #1 Christian Hosoi and Sweden's Tony Magnusson, will compete against Australia's best.
The ramp right was the one for me that was kind of make or break. It was hometown, it was in Melbourne. I don't even know how many US pros were there. I think it may have been 30, 35.
Danny Wade, Tony Magnusson, Chris Miller, Bod Boyle. We had everybody there. Jeff Kendall, like just a who's who of skateboarding. You know, 30 American skaters and the best Australian guys.
I think that was definitely a contest where Australian skateboarding changed. The year before, there was really nobody.
It threw us right in the deep end. We were like, yeah, we're winning comps, you know, we're the best in Australia. Then it's like, wow, look at all these guys. This is a whole nother circuit. And that was kind of inspirational again, like to go and try and compete in another whole area where it was like, you wouldn't expect to win.
They saw a handful of Australians make the cut, the final cut. And the guys that were cutting their teeth at that point, Ben Pappas, Tuss Pappas, all those guys, they're there watching going, I can't believe it, man. Like some of the guys that I skateboard with have just finished top 10 in a world-class contest with every skateboarder here.
There was a time in skating, especially in the 80s, where all of the professionals came from the United States. And the only ones that were breaking into those ranks were the Australians.
There's a lot of new guys out there like Danny Wayne, Sergi Ventura, and Gary Valentine who are really making a big entrance with a lot of the new tricks that are coming out.
Skateboarding had finally come good in Australia, and we were right up there with them.
In the early 90s, we really saw the demise of vert skating in terms of popularity and participants. And in the US, we saw most of the skate parks just closing down because they couldn't afford the insurance, they didn't have the interest.
And for a lot of kids out there who were interested in skateboarding, it's hard to get to a vert ramp. You know, you can't have a 10-foot vert ramp in every suburb. It's easier to walk out the front door and do a kickflip. So street skating became way more popular than vert skating.
The skateboarding industry was trying different innovative things. You know, the small wheel syndrome came in, the skinny boards and, you know, generic nose tail boards. And it sort of really changed skateboarding a lot.
That whole evolution in the early 90s was probably the best thing that can happen for skateboarding. It may have divided us all, but in the end, it's going to keep us all together, I think.
I mean, it's probably for good at skateboarding, but I just look at it today still and wonder if it was, you know, like, because you have every little punk who can do a 360 flip or a kick flip thinks that they should be pro, and it's like, dude, even drop in on a ramp, I'll vert and I'll clap.
You know, the skaters just took to the streets. They just found their own terrain. They went and learned how to skate handrails and big gaps and incorporated freestyle type maneuvers into going fast and big.
That whole lull in skateboarding of that period created a new generation of technical wizards, basically.
Chad was actually the person that I started skateboarding with, and I would even say, like, you know, taught me the basics.
Groups of kids just come to my father's shop and we just used to go up and skate to high school. There was just a bunch of people I used to skate with.
The Gold Coast really didn't have that big city vibe. Like, we were never really caught up in any scene. It was just all there. So there was always ramps, there was always bowls, and then we just had everything there to skate.
Well, the first crew like I sort of started like hang out with was Andrew Curry and Brian Jacobson and Seb Steele and all those guys. They were like the main guys that were sponsored down there and like the best skaters there.
Matt got me my ass into gear because I was lagging a lot, like just didn't know what I was doing, and he came through and just sort of led the path for me. I just followed in his steps. So.
Yeah, Chad was probably, you know, definitely one of the ones that pushed me, like pushed my skating a lot, and like just hanging out with him and skating all the time, it was definitely a good influence, you know, and he sort of helped me progress a lot too, I think.
Just showed because over like a 1 to 2 year period, he just excelled beyond anyone there during that time. He had more drive than I've ever seen anyone have to this day still.
It was dying out. It's dying out heavy.
Dead.
Small wheels were coming in, like really small, retarded small wheels.
Yeah.
Just all the street shit, and we were just vert pigs, just skating by ourselves, fuck it.
What I saw with Ben and Tuss, and we had a lot to do with what happened with them, you could just see how keen they were. And I remember people saying, oh, you know, look at Tuss there, he's trying to do a stale fish and he can't do a grind on the ramp. And I'd say, so what, you know? Who needs a grind? Just get into it.
I used to be sitting on this chair facing that ramp, and Tuss would just be walking up on that platform, just looking at me, looking at me all the time. And then he'd say to me, watch this, and he used to always skate across the ramp and look at me and ask me, you know, like, my grind's better, my grind's better.
I mean, then we were obviously a lot better than them because they were just kids, but you could just see it. Now, these kids are going to be good. They're going to be kicking our ass really soon, you know.
When they sponsored us, we couldn't skate. Like, we could skate, but they just saw two little bogans at the ramp racing to learn tricks.
And they had it the hardest too. That was when it died. They got good when it died. Like 92, when it sucked. They were at Northcote by themselves every day, abusing the crap out of each other, beating each other up, frantically trying to learn manoeuvres like it was gone out of fashion. Those guys are so hardcore, talking shit on me, talking shit on Gary, like, you know, little rats, like, get off the ramp, Ellis, you fat prick.
These were just two kids turning up out in the middle of nowhere, you know, Tuss with his bad Tony Hawk copy haircut and his younger brother who wanted to be just like Tuss, you know.
Remember we were skating Northcote, Tuss has gone to 7-Eleven, so I've quickly padded up and learned a trick, Japan 1-foots. By the time he got back, I had him dialed. Remember that?
Oh, fuck.
And he's turned up like, what? Fuck. Put his pads on, ran up the ramp, started trying him.
Yeah, I wouldn't go to 7-Eleven unless he'd go from that point. I'm like, nah, I'm not going to fucking anywhere until you're going, just to make sure, you know.
The guys that took it to the next extreme, like Ben and Tuss and Jason, you know, those are guys that are still were going at it on a world-class level, even when they might not have seen a lot of future in it, but they were really pushing themselves to become a better skater on a daily basis.
All of the basics of modern day skating today, and all the hard tricks, you know, like were basically innovated by Tuss and Ben, you know, like they went out there and they learned 360 flip to mute or 360 flip indie, you know.
Yeah, he learnt rock the fakies before me and that really pissed me off. I got mad at him because it was our first real trick we started learning and I was the ballsy one. Little prick beat me to it and I was fucking mad as fuck.
And that's like one of the ballsiest tricks to learn.
Yeah, you got me on that one.
Yeah.
But I got you with the McTwist.
Ben and Tuss kept me going because I wanted to keep up with those guys. And they just took off. I didn't realise to keep up with them would be to beat everybody.
The caliber of skating at this event is the best we've seen all year.
Doesn't this remind you of the way we all started this back in Las Vegas, Nevada, where it was Tony Hawk and Tuss Pappas going head to head, and they had a runoff at that contest, and here we go again. Well, it's kind of deja vu. In Las Vegas, Tony Hawk and Tuss Pappas went head-to-head for a final. They did it again today, as you saw, and I'm going to tell them for the first time. Tuss, you're the champion. I don't know if you know that, but you won the contest.
Did I? Nah.
You won the contest.
Right. You serious?
Yes, you did.
Nah.
Well, kind of an unbelievable reaction.
In '96, those guys were incredible, you know. I just remember they were 1-2 at every comp with maybe Jason Ellis coming third, or sometimes Jason would win one, you know. They were incredible.
And when I first went back to America after all that, they were just like, man, did you used to skate with Tuss and Ben? And I was just like, yeah, I know. Oh, they're killing you, aren't they?
They're the two guys, in my eyes, that put vert skateboarding on the map for Australia, big time, because it did not matter that they were from the land down under. They were just damn right the best guys in the world on those given days, and that's pretty awesome.
One thing is Australian, American and Brazilian are a level higher, and the European are growing up, but it's not as good as them, not yet.
6-7 years ago is when you started looking on the platform and just seeing guys from all different parts of the world on the vert comps ripping, and you started looking around the street courses and going, oh, where's he from? Oh, he's from Brazil, oh, he's from Germany.
You know, guys like Matthias and Rune and Renton, Ben and Tass, and lots of good Brazilians. You go to a contest now and the top of the ramp is so multicultural.
Skating's global now, it's no longer just California, you know, people are ripping all over the world, you know, like in every part of Australia, you know, South America, Africa, you know, it's just a global thing.
Just skateboarders in general, it's sort of, they just feel linked, you know, with skateboarding. I mean, it doesn't matter what country you go to, you know, like if there's a skateboarder in town, you've basically got you've got a friend, you know.
Oh yeah, it's a brotherhood. Yeah, it's like, yeah, all skaters, you can go anywhere in the world and you can stay at people's houses as long as you're like cool and not a dickhead.
People will just come up and, you know, if you're holding a skateboard, you know, they'll just come up and start talking to you. And
if someone's a skateboarder, they're a skateboarder, man. They're your brother, you know, you look after them. If someone's got a skateboard t-shirt on, you see them getting beaten up, you know, you want to help them because, you know, they're a skateboarder and that's just the way it works. We stick together.
Renton Miller and someone else held this banner up saying "Go Skunk" or whatever, skunk them, and the security guards came out and just like tried to get it off them, and they held it up and they ripped it out of their hands, and they started getting really aggressive with everyone, and then the security guards threw the first punch, and it got a bit restless, and then more and more security guards just came in when it didn't need to happen, and then this one security, it was all over, everyone's just moving off the course, and this one security guard had the gnarliest attitude, like just chest out, you know, stupidest thing I've ever seen. And he went to kick this guy's leg out or kick him in the balls or something, and Skunk was right behind him. And security at the street course.
I think if you find a corporate security card having a go at one of them and there's a mass of them, I think you'll find they'll be in there supporting their mates. I think you'll see it every time.
It was probably a little bit too gnarly, but I mean, the guy was just, he was so stupid, he was pretty much asking for it.
And I went to the X Games just gone and, you know, fucking sucks. These guys, you know, like, they're not even worried about the crowd, they're just waiting for the cameraman. You know, it's all like, no, can't do it yet, we're not ready.
The X Games, it's good and bad, you know. The control of the X Games is in the hands of non-skateboarders, which is the bad bit. The good bit is that it does bring new people into the sport.
A little kid doesn't watch the X Games and think, oh, what's this corporate, you know, garbage going on here? He just watches the skateboarding and is stoked on it.
I'm not into it at all. We ain't toys or puppets. We're skaters, you know. We're against the fucking public.
That's the thing, is people are always crying, oh, all this money's in skateboarding, it's ruining, and it's like, it just means that the pros don't have to work in skate shops anymore to make a living, you know? They can actually go do what they love to do and get paid for it and not have to worry about making ends meet.
It's good for me, I mean, because I'm a fucking pro skater, so I get the money, whatever.
Some of the guys, Matt Mumford, Dustin, like Elle, Phil, there's just a list of really good skaters and a couple like Matt and Dustin that have just emerged as phenomenal, you know, and you're going to see more of those kinds of guys coming up.
I think it's awesome that like people from Australia can actually make it into that league of pushing skateboarding to that next level. Dustin Dolan, you know, is probably like the one guy right now that's coming out of Australia is on that level, like seriously.
I don't know, I was just like rolling off 5 stairs and shit before I could ollie, so I don't know. I don't like skating the stuff I skate, big stuff.
Some people are just super famous because they are super gnarly skaters, they do the biggest gnarly shit. Other guys are super famous because they're really technical and stuff, and some guys are just famous because of their style alone, that's it.
Like kids like me, because like I just get drunk and party with them, you know, like they have fun.
The first person to do an air and the next person to do a backside nose blunt down a 10-stair rail, you know, I don't know who's pushing it more really.
Kids have got to start getting gnarlier out here because there's so many kids with potential, but no one's really doing shit.
Some of the stunt work these days is pretty harsh though. Watching guys just absolutely annihilate themselves to get that special bit of footage for some video.
Skaters are freaks, there's no doubt about it. And they were even more on a higher scale of freaks a while back. Take it back to the late 70s and you're just looking at total madmen.
Every time you look in a magazine or on a video, the tricks just keep getting more technical, bigger, more stunt-like, because, you know, to do something new or to be noticed, you've got to go big. You've got to do something really heavy.
Yeah, it's hard to be a professional skateboarder now. You know, you have to be either gifted or have a lot of time on your hands to perfect the art.
Like when I go out to skate that type of stuff, I'm definitely scared, and I'm definitely like, you know, half the time I'm not really wanting to do it, you know, but there's always something in the back of your mind that pushes you.
There's nothing I can do about it. I'm addicted to it. Even when I'm hurt, I'll still go out skating, which sucks because I never get better.
In terms of professional skating, it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and better and more dangerous because the stakes are high.
It just seems more like people are just perfecting it to a point where it's just so smooth and so precise.
What matters is that the guys who are skating now are happy. That's all that matters. If they're happy, the skate scene will grow in a really good direction, you know, and it'll become awesome.
Skateboarding is like a wild animal, you know. It shouldn't be caged.
I've had heaps of younger girls come up to me, you know, and telling me they've just been skating for about 6 weeks or, you know, a few months and stuff and really into it. And yeah, it's growing heaps.
When people like myself are 50 and 60, skateboarding is going to be accepted across the board because everyone had either owned one and done it, or had ridden a surfboard, or knew someone who did it. There will be no old ladies saying, because that old lady will have gone, I used to have frontside calf grind.
Skating is like the best thing in the world to do. So how are people not going to work that out, you know? Like they're going to work it out and they're going to do it.
It's going to go big. It's going to be rock star stuff again like the soy times.
Who knows? I don't want to claim nothing. Just want to have fun.
We'll just see. We're going off again. So we know. We'll see what happens. You never know.
What did I do? Broke my toes, my thumbs. We got ligament damage in both knees. I did that a long time ago. I couldn't knee slope for about a year. I used to sew a patch on my jeans because I used to skid on my ass like I was going down a slide.
You know, we were kind of like skateboarders dos veteranos of the whole thing, you know. We were veterans. We thought these things out, you know, and it took other kids to take it to the nth degree somewhere else.
I think they had it so easy. All they did was... all they did was airs. Kick your foot off, bit of a judo, crowd's going mad, you know what I mean? These days we got to kill ourselves, fucking 900, fucking flip your board, spin around, land, you know what I mean?
Spin,
those guys are just cruising, you know what I mean? Doing air here, air there. They had it so easy.
I've broken this wrist 7 times and this one 5 times. I've broken this collarbone, I don't even know, like 10 times, and I've dislocated it like 100 times. If I wanted to right now, I could pull it out for you, but I'm over the party trick thing.
The only way I'll give up is when I'm dead, you know? And that's why I've been tattooed. Because when I'm dead, you know, hopefully, I mean, this is a pretty hard thing to say, but you know, I'd have no problem, maybe if my son would probably deal with it, getting my skin taken off my body and, you know, getting it, you know, he could hang it up somewhere, you know? And I don't even care if he doesn't skate, you know? But as long as that still lives, I know skin rots and this and that and whatever.
You know, like, people, like, used to hassle us for wearing big clothes and stuff, like, and now you get all, like, stupid, fresh people wearing 3/4 pants and shit going, ew, well, skating invented all the fashion for today, basically, and I just feel that people just don't know shit and they're stupid.
Snapped my coccyx bone off. It's not on there anymore. I got the x-rays at home. It's just like this little bit that's floating down in my bum somewhere, whatever. He just said it doesn't matter as long as it doesn't touch anything, you'll be right.